very own out of the Florida Panhandle, Anchorman Tish Rowland. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Tess Rowland. Thank you, MADD Florida, for giving me this distinct honor to recognize the incredible law enforcement officers who are our first line of defense in tragic DUI and BUI crashes. In the words of the great Charles Dickens, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. Little did I realize this would become my life story as I awoke the morning of May 4th, 2021. It's a quote that I'm sure resonates with many of us. Life is truly composed of many magic moments. However, as many law enforcement officers in this room can attest, magic moments can turn into tragic moments in the blink of an eye. And while I'll never fully grasp how or why a tragic moment came to be for me in my life, I know it was made possible due to the choices of someone else. I made the choice to fight back, and I chose to make the worst time in my life the absolute best one. I'm a South Florida native, and I grew up here in Weston, Florida. I graduated from American Heritage with big dreams of becoming a television news reporter. My talents took me to Loyola University, New Orleans, but I'm a Florida girl at heart, and upon my college graduation in 2020, I took a job as a television news reporter in Panama City Beach. In the news industry, you often start out manning and carrying your own equipment, which may not seem glamorous to many, but for me, it was everything that I could have dreamed about. I lived by the beach, and like many police officers in this room, I loved my job because no day is ever the same. And also, like many law enforcement officers in this room, my car serves as my office, and I'm often found chasing the latest and greatest story to deliver to our viewers each and every day. In March 2021, I decided to transition to the role of the morning news reporter. So that meant that my day would start at 2 a.m., and I had to be out the door by 3 a.m. to be at the office by 3:30 a.m. Most of my coworkers, to say the least, were not envious of my schedule, but working mornings allowed me to be off at noon so I could train for the 15K race that I was running, and of course be by the pool for much of the day. And another big draw to the position for me was the fact that I went in at 3 in the morning because I thought to myself that I would be avoiding heavy traffic. Because who's really on the road at 3 in the morning? I woke up on the morning of May 4th, 2021, thinking it was just a normal Tuesday morning. A magic moment for me, in hindsight, I now realize, is that I called my mom the night before. And I told her how much I loved her, and that I was the absolute happiest I had been in my entire life. And just a few hours later, I woke up for work. It was another day, and it was another opportunity for a magic moment. Until I encountered a reckless, wrong way, drunk, and drugged driver. I remember seeing bright headlights and having no time to react. I was unconscious for much thereafter, but officers on scene told me that my knee had been pulverized by my dashboard and that the engine of the car was just inches away from my body. While I was among the few lucky ones to survive a head-on collision, I did not escape unscathed. My entire world turned upside down in an instant. That magic moment turned tragic in a flash, and my future was stolen by the actions of someone else. I had 4 emergency surgeries upon being admitted to the hospital, and fortunately the lower portion of my leg was able to be saved, but it would require surgery to fix my knee. I also suffered compound and complex fractures to my arm, my elbow, and my shoulder. My shoulder fracture was so bad, it truly required a total shoulder replacement to fix. In an effort to spare my 22-year-old self of this life-changing procedure, doctors made the tough call to rebuild my shoulder using entirely metal plates and screws. They told me that it would never be anatomically correct. And even with that surgery, they were not sure if I would ever gain true use of my arm at all. Walking, they suggested, would take 4 to 6 months to relearn to do on my own. And after these several difficult surgeries, they discovered internal injury, so that required yet another surgery. So in addition to rehabilitating my entire right side, I also had to reform my diet to enable healing. I could only dream of having a meal as good as the one that we had tonight. I had my 6th surgery back in November to correct some things within my elbow, and I actually just had my 7th surgery several weeks ago on my abdomen. You may not realize it tonight, but I am wearing a brace. Before this, I was an avid runner, and at 22 years old, I had never broken a bone in my entire life. My injuries required 4 plates and 22 screws to fix, and I stand before you rebuilt into the bionic woman that I am today. In addition to my hardware, I still struggle with mental scars that still haunt me to this day. There hasn't been a night that I haven't closed my eyes and seen bright headlights. I often wonder if that image will ever leave my mind. This life-altering saga, all because one person decided for their 22nd birthday that they were going to overindulge in alcohol. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. He made the conscious choice to drive while impaired. This quite simply never had to happen. However, as we all know, my story isn't unique, and this is something that happens all too often. The most horrifying part about this ordeal is not only that this man was uninjured, but is still walking scot-free to this day. He is, as far as I know, living and driving as if this never happened. Well, I look in the mirror, and I'm sometimes horrified with my appearance, to say the least. I'm still attending physical therapy in hopes of regaining the ability to do simple daily tasks that we all take for granted. I am happy to say that I have defied most of the doctors' expectations and their grim outlook of what my life would be like with these polytraumatic injuries. I made a choice very early on in my recovery that I had to get better and not bitter about what happened to me to ensure my best possible outcomes. There are good days, and there are really bad days. And I'm happy to say that most of the time, the good outweighs the bad. But that is not true for all victims of this 100% preventable crime. I can't even begin to articulate the unending trauma that victims must endure, and the devastating realization that these crimes continue to happen each and every day, everywhere. I remember lying in my hospital bed when my mom arrived after getting the most dreaded phone call that any parent can ever receive. I've learned through working alongside many law enforcement officers that those dire phone calls never get easier to make. They cast a long, dark shadow over their efforts to prevent this crime. I swore to my mother in my hospital bed that no one should ever have to go through this pain. And while I'm grateful to still be alive, I was flat out robbed of my hopes and dreams. All my future magic moments were shattered in a flash. My health was stolen from me in an instant. I was no longer independent, and my mother put her entire life on hold and gave up her job to be a driving force in my recovery. You see in this slideshow a girl holding a camera. I once thought that that was part of my identity. It made me who I am. I've since had to part ways with that due to my shoulder injuries sustained in my crash. Drunk driving has become the #1 traffic-related death in America. It's estimated that over 10,000 people die in a DUI crash every single year. Thousands more are injured. And as we all know, that impact is multiplied tenfold when we take into account the victims' families and friends. And while MADD has worked very hard to cut drunk driving deaths in half since its founding in 1980, that is still far too many. I credit the quick response of my local law enforcement, local EMS, and local doctors for keeping me alive on May 4th, 2021. But several law enforcement officers truly went above and beyond, inspiring me that my pain should be channeled into a powerful purpose that could save the lives of countless others. This saved my life. They rallied the entire community behind me and my new mission as well. Thank you to Lieutenant Jason King for being that person to knock on my door and check in on me when I was not doing okay, mentally or physically. He also introduced me to other incredible troopers like Lieutenant Daniel Wagner and Trooper Steve Arch. Through their help, I am now speaking to children in schools about the power of their choice and their influence. My personal story illustrates that the wrong choices can rob them of their magic moments, or worse, someone else's. With the blessing of Sheriff Tommy Ford, we also assisted in putting together the first ever Bay County DUI Task Force. It's composed of 8 local law enforcement agencies, and in just 6 months, it's been credited with getting countless suspected impaired drivers off the road. The truth is, there is no easy fix to solving impaired driving. My wish is that the solution could be as simple as a miracle drug or a cure. We know that the HALT Act will soon provide impairment monitors as a safety standard within all cars. And while this is a major milestone in preventing impaired driving, the true solution is someone making the proactive choice not to do it. The solution takes all of us to ignite true change through our influence, education, awareness, and of course, enforcement. Law enforcement officers know first and foremost that the single difference between a DUI misdemeanor and a DUI manslaughter is just one traffic stop, and doing the work to get an impaired driver off the road before they hurt themselves or others. The work that you do is vital to MADD to continue its mission. And I thank each officer in this room for actively risking your lives each and every shift to ensure that others get to where they need to go safely and return home to their loved ones. So I thank you all for listening as we all do our part to keep our roads safe and free of the dangers that come when an impaired driver takes on the road. May my story be a testimony that the long hours and the work that you do each and every shift truly make a difference for the citizens that you serve. Together, we can save more lives and create more magic moments, so no family or person ever has to experience the inexplicable pain and anguish that comes when those moments are stolen right before your eyes. I will not stop until there are no more bright-eyed young girls who are robbed of their dreams due to the thoughtlessness of someone's reckless actions.
Hi everybody, welcome to CNN Live in Waterloo City. My name is Tess.
That little girl didn't deserve this outcome. In fact, absolutely no one does. No more victims. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Dan, for emceeing tonight. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'll keep saying it until I retire or something else worse happens and the boss doesn't want to type with me anymore. MADD has single-handedly changed U.S. culture to recognize that drinking and driving is preventable. It is a violent crime and it's unacceptable.